This is Eli.
And Sam.
And welcome to an explosive episode of Typewriter Minutes. One of the first rocket-like devices was a wooden bird. Somewhere around the year 400 BC, Archytas mystified and amused the citizens of Tarentum in southern Italy by flying a pigeon made of wood. Escaping steam propelled the bird suspended on wires.
About 300 years after the pigeon, another Greek, hero of Alexandria, invented a similar rocket-like device called an aeolipile. It, too, used steam as a propulsive gas.
The Chinese began experimenting with gunpowder-filled tubes in the 1st century AD. At some point, they attached bamboo tubes to arrows and launched them with bows. Soon, they discovered that these gunpowder tubes could launch themselves just by the power produced from the escaping gas. The true rocket was born.
The date reporting the first use of true rockets was 1232. At this time, the Chinese and the Mongols were at war with each other. During the Battle of Kaikang, the Chinese repelled the Mongol invaders by a barrage of arrows of flying fire. These fire arrows were a simple form of a solid propellant rocket.
Robert Goddard, the father of modern rocketry, achieved the first successful flight with a liquid propellant rocket on March 16, 1926. Fueled by liquid oxygen and gasoline, the rocket flew for only 2.5 seconds, climbed 12.5 meters, and landed 56 meters away in a cabbage patch. By today's standards, the flight was unimpressive, but Goddard's gasoline rocket was the forerunner of a whole new era in rocket flight. So you could say that people have known since the 1200s that you need to light a fire under a rocket to give it a little sizzle. This is a Hermes Rocket we got a few months ago. As you can see, it's boring gray paint, gray felt, gray and black keys, kinda just boring. And here's the same Hermes rocket after we lit a fire under it and gave it a little sizzle.
So this Hermes rocket we bought on eBay several months ago. It's been waiting in the queue to be cleaned and repaired. I think it was an eBay purchase. Most typewriters I buy locally or on Shop Goodwill, but I got a good deal on eBay. And just thought that the gray was a little too drab and thought we needed to spice it up a little bit. And we'll show you how I did that in a few minutes. First, we thought we would start with a little bit of history about the Hermes Baby and Hermes Rocket.
The first Hermes Baby, the featherweight, was introduced in 1935. It was made in Switzerland by Paillard, pardon my pronunciation, and designed by Italian engineer Giuseppe Prezioso. It tipped the scales at less than 6 pounds, and its small size and weight were heavily promoted in advertisements for the baby. The first Hermes Baby had a squared-off metal case. In the mid-1940s, the Baby and Rocket, same machines, different branding, had gull-wing ribbon covers and a sloping metal case. In 1954, they made the Baby in a greenish-gray with olive-colored squarish keys. In 1956 or so, the Baby and Rocket switched to a lighter seafoam green like the Hermes 3000. In 1963, the Baby and Rocket switched to a single-piece ribbon cover instead of gull wings. 1967 and later models had plastic bodies and cases, and they made some of them in Germany and Brazil. All told, there were over 4.5 million babies and rockets made. Thanks, Giuseppe Prezioso.
All right, back to our rocket. Here's the portable case that it comes in. It's got the sloping angle here instead of the squared off original version. It's really slim and trim. We'll show how this typewriter compares in size to some of our other ultra portables in a few minutes. I'll show you the bottom of the case. Most babies and rockets have feet that have completely worn smooth, and so I replaced those with these rubber grommets that work really well, and just less than $2 I think for a complete set of grommets from, I think we got them at Ace Hardware. And when you're ready to take it out of the case, just push these 2 metal buttons in, lift it up and out, and you'll see the inside of the case here. These little latches on each side latch into the metal pieces here and here. And these little pointy doodads here are what hold the typewriter into the back of the case with these little holes right here. So that's what holds it. Oh, back up, there we go. Those little holes there keep the lid on.
Now let's take a look at some of the features. On the keyboard, it's just a standard QWERTY keyboard, and it has a backspace key, a margin release, but no tabulator.
No tabulator.
On the right side, we have a shift key and one on the left, and as you can see, it's a carriage shift, not a basket shift. And also down on the left here, it has a caps lock. And
let's see, there's no dedicated one key, so what do you use for that?
You have to use a lowercase l, and then there's no exclamation point because that's on the key with one, so you do an apostrophe, backspace, period.
All right, let's take a look under the hood. So under the gull wings, they just pop up, and this edge of the ribbon cover holds on to that little gadget right there. Same on the left side. Just a basic type basket here. It does not have bichrome ribbon, so there's no ribbon color selector switch here like you'll see on some of the later models. So we put an all black ribbon on this one. It does have automatic ribbon reversal. You'll see that the thread, or the ribbon threads through these little loops right here and right there. And you have to have eyelets on these ribbons, and when it gets to the end of the spool, the eyelet comes out, triggers that, and then it starts winding the other direction. There's also, we'll put these down, there's also a manual ribbon reverse down here. There's a little lever right here, and there's another one on this side, so you just doink, push it that way, and then doink, push it that way, and that's your manual ribbon reverse. Let's see, up here we have a paper bale. When we got this machine, it was missing, and thankfully we live just a little more than a stone's throw from Typewriter Justice, and he happened to have a parts machine, so thank you, Typewriter Justice, for making our Hermes Rocket whole. There's a little paper rest kind of hidden right there. You can fold it down this way or this way. Let's see, what do we have over here? Got a little teeny tiny platen knob. The platen has a really small diameter on this, so it's kind of hard to get little cardstock through there, but regular paper feeds through just fine. We'll switch off the camera for just a minute. Mr. Cameraman, you want to take control? It has just one carriage release lever on this side, and that's how you slide the carriage back and forth. There are two little knobs for paper release. There's a chrome one on this side, which you can lift up, then you can scoot your paper if you've got it in crooked or when you're ready to take your paper out. So this one holds it in place. There's also one on this side, a little gray one, but you have to hold it up to get the paper in and out. So that one you have to hold. This one stays up by itself. All right, over here there are two sliding margin buttons for setting your right and left margin, and if you'll zoom in there, you'll see there's a little red arrow, which is kind of a neat touch that shows where you are on the scale for the right and the left margin. And then let's turn around to the back. We're about to get video bombed by our toddler, so we'll be right back. By the way, this little guy right here is a crossbow. You see that on Hermes and other Swiss products to show that it was made in Switzerland.
Okay, we're toddler free again. Now let's take a look at the backside. So there's the Hermes logo, and then it says made in Switzerland by Payard. And then this is the town it was made in, Verden.
We're not sure how it's pronounced, so we're going to go with Verden. And then up here you see, here's the little trigger for the bell. And then here's the margin release gadget. So you'll see when we slide the carriage back and forth, that's what triggers the bell. And then this is when you get to the margin, it stops when you push the margin release key. That little doodad backs up so you can keep going. Okay, back over to this side of the carriage. Now this is a really teeny tiny return lever, and it folds out like so. And then if you'll come up top, Mr. Cameraman, you'll see there's a little lever, come up here, that locks it in place when it's in the case. So this, you have to move down, and then that comes out. And you'll see if you'll come up here, it's got a 1 and a 2 on the top. That's for the single space, double space. And then when you're ready to put it back in its case, this guy folds there, that goes flat, and then that goes up into that little slot, and that keeps it tight to the machine so you can put it in the case. Now there's one other feature that is not our favorite design, but on a lot of portables and ultra portables, there's a line space release that allows you to get rid of the clicks so that you can go exactly where you want to on a form. And on a lot of typewriters, you do it by either pulling the knob in or out, or this gadget slides to a release position. This one doesn't have it. It has this kind of unusual design where you have to hold the right plat knob, and then this one releases by turning it slightly, I forget which way. There you go. Turn it to the right, and that loosens it, and that loosens the clicks. And it's got a little limiter. You'll see this metal thing in there. Keeps you from unscrewing the knob all the way. Catches it. Otherwise, if you kept doing this, this knob would come off. That screws out. And when you're done doing the release, tighten it back up by turning it counterclockwise. Now the clicks are back in place. So kind of an unusual design. It's a little bit cumbersome, but there you go.
Here are a few scenes to show you how it compares in size to some other machines. Here it is next to its cousin, the Hermes 3000.
Quite a bit shorter compared to what's considered a portable, but the Hermes 3000 is more of a luggable. This guy is pretty small. And here it is next to a little brother Webster XL500, which is a small machine by itself, but even that one looks kind of large compared to the little Hermes Rocket.
Has the Hermes Rocket finally met its match? No, even the Olympia SF, another ultra portable, is a little bit bigger.
And it's a good deal heavier too. I need to put it on the scales, but nothing beats the Rocket, at least in our collection, as far as ultra portability. The gray felt that was under the machine when I got it was in decent shape, but it was a little bit drab, so I wanted to replace it. I also had to replace it because the remnants of the old rubber feet were underneath that felt, and I had to get the felt off to replace the rubber feet. Also, there were, I don't know, half a dozen old dead worms in the felt and on the felt, and it was just kind of grody. So I started scraping it off with the razor blade scraper. It took a while. I had picked up some placemats at IKEA, and I saw the red one. I thought, well, I knew what I was going to use that for, so I cut it to size. The diameter was a little bit short to get to the corners of the base, but the good news is you can't see that once the shell's on. So I put the rubber mat in and reassembled the machine, and I noticed a problem. Thankfully, I did not glue down the mat because I noticed that the type bar linkage on this side and on this side is right over the rubber foot. And the problem was with that red mat on top of the foot created a little hump, and this was bottoming out, and it wasn't tripping the escapement unless I pushed down really hard. Also in the back of the machine, again, over that rubber foot, the red mat was coming up and touching and dampening the bell, so instead of a ding, I had a doink. So I had to take the machine apart, and I'll show you what I did. So I just cut some holes where the feet were and then reassembled the machine. Now we have little cutouts where the rubber feet are, and so spacebar works just fine. And so far, the rubber mat in the back isn't touching the bell to dampen it. So if it ever does, I can always take the body off and glue this mat back down. But for now, everything's working just fine.
And now for a type test.
Okay, I'll put the paper support up. And something I've noticed when you're feeding the paper through on this, if you'll come up here, Mr. Cameraman, the leading edge of the paper sometimes gets caught on the ribbon cover. So what I do is I lift up the carriage and then it feeds through without snagging on the ribbon cover. Okay. Here we go.
First, on the black setting, the quick red fox jumped over the lazy brown dogs.
So it has a light, snappy touch. One thing I've noticed is that I have to keep an even pace. If I hurry it up too much, sometimes I get bunched letters, but if I keep, again, a nice steady pace, it hasn't been an issue. This little teeny stubby return arm is a little bit of a challenge when you're returning the carriage. In order to get the paper to advance, sometimes it's not till you get it over here that it finally clicks and lifts up. So that takes some getting used to. You either have to get a little bit of extra force at the beginning, or just wait till you get to the end and then it line spaces.
Now, on black, now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country.
There's the line lock, so you push margin release. So let's zoom in on that. We just put a new black ribbon on it. Pardon the typo up there. But the impression is nice and clean and crisp. The lower and uppercase letters were a little bit out of adjustment when we started tuning it up, but that's fixed now. So everything looks good. We'll do a little test with the H's if you'll take the camera back. We'll finish the type test up.
Capital H, small h, capital H, small h, capital H, small h. Now at the end. Okay.
Line lock.
Capital H, small h, capital H, small h, capital H, small h.
So let's look at that. Nice and even Steven. Nice even Steven. Now on this model, there's actually two sets of screws on the right side. You can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's one set down in there, and then there's another set on the left side to adjust the upper and lowercase letters. But everything is looking pretty good. A couple other notes about the keys. They are kind of small and round compared to like a Hermes 3000 or 5 Series Smith Corona keys that are larger and more ergonomic. So that's taking some getting used to for me. When I first started, my fingers were actually slipping between the keys. But like anything else, it's whatever you get used to. The other thing that I need to fix, and I haven't figured out yet, is the caps lock It works, but the vibration from typing, oh, there we go. Sometimes the vibration knocks it off. So I don't know if I'm gonna try to bend that or not. There's a couple adjustments I think I can see how to make, but since I don't use caps lock that often, I'm not sure if I'm gonna try and tweak that or not. We'll see. Other than that, it's a pretty spiffy little typer.
By the way, you might know this, but in case you don't, here's what you can do with that little circle by the ribbon vibrator.
You can stick a pencil or pin in, and you can make lines horizontally or vertically. So you can make little text boxes or spreadsheets. Anyway, just a nifty little feature sometimes people forget about.
We'll finish up this review of our 1949 Hermes Rocket with some pros and cons.
By the way, we're calling this a rocket, but it really could be a baby or a rocket. The red lettering has worn off, but I've seen this exact same configuration in both with baby branding and rocket branding, so it could be either one, but we're going to call it a rocket because that just sounds cool. All right, back to pros and cons.
So here are some of the pros. First of all, it has sizzle in the front and in the back. Also, it is super small and light, making it perfect for taking on vacation. And it has some really nice, happy typing action and a durable metal case. And as one final plus, we added new rubber feet.
Couple cons. The small, snubby return lever makes it a little bit harder to get the paper to advance. That takes some getting used to. Later models added a longer line space lever that made it a little bit easier, so this is a little bit of a novelty. The letter bunching, if you type too quickly, again, I think you can manage that with typing style. Just keep a steady pace and you'll be fine. It does not have a tabulator, which to me is not a big deal because I don't really use tabs that much. But if you're interested in a machine that tabulates, you have to look somewhere else. And then finally, the caps lock that sticks but comes off sometimes with vibration. Of course, it's not going to do it now, but not a big deal. But that's one little con that I'm going to have to figure out how I can fix. That's it for pros and cons.
Here's a quick update on two things. First, we fixed the caps lock. And second, we cut a hole where the bell is so that we don't ever get a doink, just dings. That's it for Typewriter Minutes. Thanks for watching our smoking hot episode. Be sure to share, link, like, and subscribe. Bye!